In 1910, Aurobindo gave an early prediction, and this prediction he gave to the correspondent of a Tamil nationalist weekly, and the prediction ran like this: since 1907, we are living in a new era which is full of hope for India. Not only India but the whole world will see sudden upheavals and revolutionary changes. The high will become low and the low high. The oppressed and the depressed shall be elevated. The nation and humanity will be animated by a new consciousness. New thought and new efforts will be made to reach new ends. Amidst these revolutionary changes, India will become free. Around the same time, the mother writes in one of her prayers, notes in one of her prayers, what are these brilliant gods whose hour of manifestation is drawing near, but the manifold activities of thy infinite being? We have been reading about the descent of the gods, and around the same time they saw that the gods were wanting to be born in human clay, take hold of the human consciousness and mold it anew, shape it anew. So it was a double work, if one may say so. On the one side, the old world, built on the old model. Its height was the Rakshasi and the Asuri type of man, the individual ego, and the highest collective unit it could conceive was the nation unit, expanding into empires. But there was nothing greater, nothing deeper that it could conceive. And Aurobindo would tell us that this type of humanity also had its role to play. It manifested, in its crowning manifestation was reason and science and philosophy, and its heart's highest hope was religion. And we see that towards the beginning of the last century, all these things had reached a point where almost one could say that the body of the world had become sick and was looking for a new body and a new birth. So Aurobindo had to deliver not only the soul of this world, but also to create a new body which would be fit to receive this new soul and this greater emergence. Just as an individual, each time the soul takes a new body and a new birth, it moves one step forward. So also, with the collective body of the nations and civilizations and the world itself, they go through cycles of growth, progress and decline. And when they take a new body, it is only so that it can have a greater reach, a wider and ampler sweep. So very interestingly, Aurobindo, it's so difficult if we look at Aurobindo from any of the past formulas to bracket him into this or that. The old materialistic science as well as the old religion, both had become old and worn out. Old materialistic science had become a cage in which the spirit could not evolve, whereas the old religion and its dead formulas had become degraded into a kitchen spirituality, as Aurobindo would call it. This is not my term but Aurobindo's term, with too much of insistence on the outward and the mechanical, and too little on the inner spirit. And in one of some of his early writings, it's so interesting and beautiful how Aurobindo is putting the finger on the real malady and showing us the new way. So I've just picked up an assortment of writings, and it's something very interesting because these writings are in the form of a letter, but these are not letters to any real person, so they are addressed to all of us. And Aurobindo is very interestingly given a title to these epistles from abroad. Actually, he's writing these letters around 1910, 1911. So he's writing these letters while in Pondicherry, but they are given the heading as epistles from abroad. And they are written to someone who is, well, all of us and every one of us. So they have a beautiful flavor. And one of that letter is where he is addressing to friend and brother. Friend and brother. And it's full of that touching irony and gentle satire that comes in Sri Aurobindo's writings. I am as yet among the unregenerate. Sri Aurobindo is saying I am an unregenerate person. Why? Instead of my eccentric notions of life changing under the pressure of victorious enlightenment, they seem to harden and fix their hold. So all around science and materialism is bringing enlightenment, and reason is the light by which mankind is hoping to steer itself. And he is saying it is only leading to a greater hardening of my mold. Here I am in Paris. So Sri Aurobindo he's not actually in Paris, but he's writing as, here I am in Paris, the center of civilization. It's very interesting, the mother's birth in France and a journey eastward is itself a symbolic, because Paris was the cradle, the height of the civilization in the old world. The center of civilization, and I am still the same dark-skinned barbarian you knew. Neither the complexion of my face nor the complexion of my thoughts has improved. And what is it that has not improved? I still believe in God and Vedanta. What a powerful thought it is. And what a tremendous power he releases into this world. I still believe in God and Vedanta, in India and impossibilities. Man is still to my eyes divine and not an animal. This is the hope that he brings to the world. And if you really look around that time, both in the field of psychology, biology and physics and social philosophy, whether we take the philosophy of an extreme form of communism, or biologically the evolutionary journey where man was nothing but an animal struggling for existence, and or in psychology where Freud had declared that man is nothing but basically a beast with some so-called impulses of a god, but these impulses of a god are not divine in origin. They are the sublimated heavings of an animal consciousness. So he is telling us, however, I still believe that man is divine and not an animal. I believe in the soul and am afflicted with the imagination that it has a past and a future, that it neither came ready-made into the world, nor into the mother's womb, nor will disintegrate at the end, whether on the pyre or in the coffin. So I believe in an immortal soul, despite everything around me saying no, 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 it is just an imagination, it is rubbish. If you really look at the previous century, even now some people believe in this old-fashioned idea that there is nothing like a soul. But at that point of time, even 30, 40 years back, it was something very prevalent. If one spoke about soul and spirituality and God, one was regarded as an out-fashioned, outdated individual. Many of us have faced this. I faced this when I joined the defense forces. To speak about God and soul was something like an anathema. Sri Aurobindo is speaking of 100 years back. That our stage is an embryo and our last worms or ashes is a creed I hold to be still unproved and unprovable. I believe that nothing in this world is made, but everything grows. That body cannot create soul, and that a mass of cells is not Buddha or Napoleon. So what is the new hope he is bringing into this world? That material science, Sri Aurobindo has very beautifully summarized it in a poem where he says, I saw a gland write Hamlet, a thyroid meditating almost nude sat under the bow tree and received enlightenment. This is, he writes very humorously about science, that science would tell us that all this is nothing but an aberration of the mind, And all this talk which goes on in Hall of Harmony and some people do here, and they think of meditation and all this is nothing. This is all aberration of the mind. And this is the old gospel. So he's saying, I don't believe that Buddha and Napoleon are nothing but products of some cells. And if you ask for my ground of belief, I shall still refuse to base it on the logical reason, because reason is not something which can prove or disprove anything. So that is not the ground, which can only argue and cannot see. And I shall give the answer of the visionary, the victim of hallucinations. And what is it that the answer he will give to us? The answer is that I have seen my soul and talked face to face with my creators. So this is the new thought that he is bringing into the world. Truly an ancient thought, but he is bringing it in new mold. Ancient in the sense, we have this thought of the Vedas, the Vedanta, this presence of the soul in man. But over a period of time, this thought has degraded into nothing but a mass of rituals and religion, and the real truth has receded into the background of simply a belief. Now, Aurobindo would tell us that also must change. So, there is this other letter. And this letter he writes to, in the first letter he is revealing to us that it's not, the old world was built on a pure materialistic scientist formula, and it's not that world that will bring the change. Many people believe that it's through technology and scientific revolution, which is nothing but an instrument for good or for evil. Others believe that it's through religion. Now Aurobindo is telling us even that is gone and something new has to come. So now this second letter he is addressing to one mythical Biren. This is again one of the letters, we don't know whether Biren really existed or not, but it's again one of those letters which remained unposted. And I think after 100 years Aurobindo can post it, because we'll really receive it in the right spirit. So these are, we can read them as post coming from Aurobindo. How beautiful it would be. That's how I fancy Live Divine is Aurobindo's letter. There are two Hinduisms, one which takes its stand on the kitchen and seeks its paradise by cleaning the body. So there is one kind of religion which which believes too much on when did you get up in the morning, how early you take a bath, what soap do you use, what perfume do you put, and do you use this particular agarbatti or not, have you prayed to God in the morning or not. So it believes in that kind of a externality, and it seeks paradise by cleaning the body. Whether one cleans the soul or not, that's not relevant, but every day one must take a bath. This is one kind of a, and we have all grown up in that daily bath was a thing stressed much more than, let's say, a daily meditation. But there is another kind of religion which seeks God not through the cooking pot and the social convention, but in the soul. The latter is also Hinduism, and it is a good deal older and more enduring than the other. It is the Hinduism of Bhishma and Sri Krishna. So what was that which our great ancestors, forefathers had brought into this world by way of aspiration? Of Shankara and Chaitanya, the Hinduism which exceeds Hindustan was from of old and will be forever, because it grows eternally through the aeons. And what is the difference between these two types of, here Aurobindo is now speaking the word Hinduism in the widest possible sense. It is the Sanatan Dharma, the eternal religion, the eternal unfolding of the eternal. That is why he repeatedly says it's not limited to a country called Hindustan, though it has been the guardian of this sacred. It's like a trustee which has held within its boundaries the highest and the most sublime flights of the spirit down the ages. But it has been found everywhere. And at one place he would say it has many scriptures, including the Bible and the Quran. All these are scriptures of that greater Hinduism, of that Sanatan Dharma. Its watchword is not Kriya but Karma, not Shastra but Jnanam, not Achar but bhakti. So we see that these are the three externalities in which the truth of the spirit is lost. And what is the relation between these two? So the relation between these two is the same relation as of a body and soul. Aurobindo is not discarding it, but he is saying it needs a new body. So what is that? The relation? Yet it accepts kriya, shastra and achar, not as ends to be followed for their own sake, but as means to perfect karma, jnanam and bhakti. So the external, not rituals but actions, are means to a greater fulfillment. The external code of conduct is a means to bring us nearer to the divine essence. And the externalities of life, provided they don't become too strict, the scriptures, the word, the written word, is a means to awaken the inner Veda. Kriya in the dictionary means every practice which helps the gaining of higher knowledge. Now, what are these kriyas? In which very often the truth of the spirit is lost. When we give too much emphasis to the kriya, or the external method, or the external action, the external way, or the external process, then we create cults and systems. But when we remember the spirit, then we can use the kriya or dispense with it. So what are these various kriyas? He says these are kriyas are means to gain higher knowledge, such as the mastering of the breath, the repetition of the mantra, the habitual use of the name, the daily meditation on the idea. So in Aurobindo's yoga, these kriyas are not stressed and emphasized, but the inner aspiration. If the aspiration is true and sincere, then kriyas evolve, they change. One can pick up any kriya and turn it to good use. But where the aspiration is missing, then the kriya becomes a dead ritual. So much so, as the mother says, that some people make even meditation a ritual. They make a ritual of meditation. Every day we must meditate for some time, and meditation itself becomes a religion. So human mind is a penchant for turning everything into a strict code. And people are even asked, how many hours you meditated today, as if the divine is going to measure the sincerity of our aspiration by the number of hours one sat cross-legged and bolt straight with eyes closed. So Aurobindo is telling us these are very fine things, but they are a means to an end and not the end in itself. So this about kriya. By shastra, it means the knowledge which regulates karma, which fixes the kartavyam and the akartavyam, that which should be done and that which should not. And it recognizes two sources of that knowledge: the eternal wisdom as distinct from the temporary injunctions. So there are two kinds of shastra. Again, just as kriyas are means towards the emergence of jnana within us, towards a higher knowledge, it's not an end in itself. One can use a kriya, dispense with it, and when the higher knowledge comes, then kriya becomes otiose and unnecessary. Similarly, there is the external code of conduct, there is the external scripture, and this scripture has its own utility to reveal to us what is the right kind of conduct, right kind of action, which will help us move towards a greater becoming and a greater fulfillment. And there Aurobindo differentiates two kinds. One is the eternal. The eternal is that which is always there. The other is temporal. So when we see all the gods and the sages in the Indian television serial, we see them always wearing a dhoti. Now, dhoti is a temporal thing. It's all right. In a certain age, it's very nice and very good and nothing wrong in wearing it. But it's not that which is the injunction of the Shastra. It is something temporal. In another place, in another custom, something else may be a valid Shastra. It is the externalities. Whereas there is something which is still deeper, and that is eternal. In our ancient books, as distinct from the temporary injunctions, in our ancient books, and the book that is written by God in the human heart, the eternal Veda. So there is the eternal Veda within the heart, and there is the external scripture, and the eternal Veda always supersedes the external scripture. In fact, there is a beautiful relation. The external scripture is a means to unfold the eternal Veda within. There is a very beautiful, the Gita itself puts it in a very beautiful way, that he who has found the higher truth, for him the utility of Vedas is only that much as for a man who is surrounded by the ocean, has the utility of a bowl full of water. So, because he goes beyond the various rituals and the externalities. Then the third thing he says is by achar. It understands all moral discipline by which the heart is purified and made a fit vessel for divine love. The reason why there are certain precepts of conduct and code of conduct is because they are helpful for the purification of nature. There are certain kriyas, certain rules of shastra, certain details of achar, which are for all time and of perpetual application. So there are certain things which are like eternal truths, and they are very helpful for all ages for mankind. They are always helpful. For example, when it is said that do not be cruel, it's something which is like always forever valid for our evolutionary growth, because cruelty, hatred, these are things which are degrading to the human consciousness. There are others which are temporary, changing with the variations of desh, kal and patra, time, place and needs of humanity. So, whereas things which relate to the inner psychological movements, they are true for humanity through the ages, but there are things which are purely external and that are not of so much relevance, and those external things are what dress one wears, whether one gets married or does not get married, what food one eats, what time one sleeps, what time one wakes up, and so on and so forth. So Aurobindo is telling us, among the temporary laws, the cooking pot and the lustration had their place, but they are not for all, not forever. So we should not make too much issue out of what we eat and what we don't eat. They have a usefulness. Of course, now the cycle is swinging to an extreme of other side. Just as some time back, about 30 years back, doctors made a fetish of non-vegetarianism. When we read the medical books, it was taught that, if you are a vegetarian, you will be suffering from this, 100 diseases, deficiency, etc. And everybody must be a non-vegetarian in some way or the other. Now, the cycle is swinging to another extreme. That even if you drink milk, there is a problem. If not only must you be a vegetarian, you must be a vegan vegetarian. Otherwise, you are likely to suffer from all the diseases. This is still a kitchen spirituality either side. So we have to liberate ourselves from this kitchen mentality and enter into a new age where we are free from the cooking pot. So much so that there are certain movements where the qualification to enter into the movement is that you must be a vegetarian. So if you are a vegetarian, you are already regarded as half a person who has gone into the path. So these things had their place, but they are not for all, not forever. It was in a time of calamity, of contraction under external pressure, that Hinduism fled from the inner temple and hid itself in the kitchen. So there was a time, and not only it hid itself in the kitchen, it brought the woman and locked her there. So we can further say, in one of our powerful messages, the mother says, I am completely against women cooking in the kitchen. Are they slaves? I wish this message is really spread far and wide, if people listen. But Aurobindo has brought some very revolutionary thought amidst humanity. So we see that this is the kind of old religion and religionism, and Aurobindo is liberating us on one side from the extreme materialism of the West, which denies the soul, which denies God, which denies anything higher and beautiful and truer and noble, which declares that all nobility of temperament, all sublimity of thought, all profundity of wisdom, the seer vision are nothing but imaginations and babbles of the neuron. They are aberrations and chemical reactions within the brain. On the other side, he is equally liberating us from the religionism and the ritualism to which India and the Eastern countries have been prone, especially in the Indian context, where religion has degraded into a mass of superstitious formula, external code of conduct, a dress code, an eating code, and this code and that code. And liberating us from both of these is creating a new basis for a new world. So what is this new basis? This old world was built upon, as we have seen, eventually even religion or science. At the center of it was seated the human ego. And he is liberating us from that and giving us a new kind of platform on which to build a new consciousness. So what is this new platform? having freed us from the trappings of the old world, that which we must cultivate, that Sri Aurobindo is revealing to us in again one of his early essays. We are reading most of the time this year those essays written in 1910, 1911, around 100 years back. So in one of his essays he is saying, what is the foundation of this new world? The foundation of the old world was desire, and its driving power or the steering was in the hands of reason. Now reason cannot build this new world, and desire cannot be the motive force. So even when we have desire for a new world, it cannot work on that basis. It has to be something deeper, newer, truer and solid. So that foundation Sri Aurobindo is revealing to us. What is that foundation on which we must build? And in one word he says, this is the power of stillness. Repeatedly Sri Aurobindo says one of the first movements of yoga is one to step back, to stand back from nature and observe it, and let it pass like waves, after waves arising from the surface, because it has a cleansing effect upon nature. The nature is free of its field, the old habits, the old sanskaras that drive us mad. They will rise and fall and rise and fall, and eventually they will sink into the vast ocean of an immobile calm. On the other side, we must establish stillness, because these higher gods who have to manifest, they are very powerful, luminous with their brilliance. They are powerful energies. And if we are not ready, then we may break down under their pressure. So Sri Aurobindo is telling us, first we must lay down the foundation of stillness. If the desired self is very active, if the rajasic and the tamasic element are very active in our nature, then they will break down. Or as he says in one of his letters to Barin, that I am not in a hurry to create a sangha. Why? Because he says, if I do it in a hurry, then people will place a monkey in place of Hanuman and call it God. So I don't want that. Hanuman is Hanuman and not just a monkey. So there is the difference, and he first wants us to lay a foundation of stillness and equality. So here he is telling us something very interesting as a practical means, the power of stillness or the strength of stillness. When we strive to act, the forces of nature do their will with us. When we grow still, we become the master. So very often this is what we always want to. We are driven by forces of nature. What should we do? And we try all kinds of means, but it doesn't work out. So he's telling us very simple. One simple means, a remedy for all ills. Be still. Be still. And there is a power in stillness. We become their master. But there are two kinds of stillness. These two kinds of stillness are the stillness of the Shava and the stillness of the Shiva. Stillness of the Shava is the dead stillness. It is like the log of wood which nothing can move. It makes a stone, something insensitive, impervious, indifferent. But there is another stillness, the stillness of Shiva, which can contain universes, build them through new rhythms and destroy them, and yet remain still and powerful within. So these two kinds of stillness are the helpless stillness of inertia, which heralds dissolution. So it is not that stillness where we simply become inert, indifferent, inactive, because it will lead to complacency and dissolution. And the stillness of assured sovereignty, which commands the harmony of life. What is stillness Sri Aurobindo has? That Mother says two places, something very powerful and interesting. One, of course, by his stillness he had mastered even the forces of material nature, which are so difficult to master. That when there is a storm, she goes into the room to close the windows, and she sees that not a drop is entering inside. And Sri Aurobindo is calmly sitting on his table and writing. What a power of stillness. That till date, after 60 years of his so-called physical departure, one goes into his room and feels that power of stillness. What a power of stillness this is. As if an eternal and sovereign stillness reigns there. On the other side, the power of this stillness, which brings out the all-creative word. The mother has spoken of in one of her anecdotes, when she goes to Sri Aurobindo, it's there in the conversations, and she was seeing the new things which are going to come, and she was seeing things in the supermind that are going to descend. And she asked Sri Aurobindo, will they ever descend upon earth? And all that Sri Aurobindo said was, yes. And instantly she saw the supermind touch this earth. This is the power of stillness. That he says yes and sees the supermind descend upon earth. So he is asking us to become yogins like that. There is two kinds of stillness, one which heralds dissolution and the other of assured sovereignty which commands the harmony of life. It is the sovereign stillness which is the calm of the yogin. The more complete the calm, the mightier the yogic power, the greater the force in action. If we are not still, the gods cannot be born. If we remain restless, if our energy is always dissipated in activities of useless kind, whether in terms of speech or action, then the gods cannot descend into this mold. In the calm, right knowledge comes. So we aspire for knowledge. It doesn't come by books. Books are necessary to open something inside. But when the mind is still, there's a very beautiful line in Savitri. There are many beautiful lines. This light comes not by struggle or by thought. In the mind's silence, the transcendent acts, and the hushed heart hears the unuttered word. Another place we have in the Upanishad a very similar thought which is echoed. Na yamatma na pravachane na medha na bahuna shruten yamaveshe vranute ten labhyastashesh atma vivranute tanuswam. Not by much learning. Na yamatma na pravachanena. Not by much learning and lecturing and etc., etc., or the kind of intelligence, intellectual activity, analysis, can we know the self. It is when we are still, the self reflects itself as in a pure and clear mirror. So the first thing to be cultivated is calm and stillness so that the right knowledge can come. The thoughts of men are a tangle of truth and falsehood, satyam and anritam. True perception is marred and clouded by false perception. They are constantly woven together in this world. True judgment lamed by false judgment. True imagination distorted by false imagination. There is a true imagination. One thinks of a new world, one can imagine, one doesn't know. But there is a true imagination. There is a false imagination where one sees all kinds of fanciful things, including the latest movie where you have the avatar going into another planet and with blue face and almost a very weird and morbid imagination. And he goes and engages into a fight. This is another kind of imagination. But there is a true imagination which has its own use, and that imagination can open the door to something beautiful, because imagination in the human mind is the reflex of the creative Maya. Just as Maya can create many forms out of infinite possibilities, so imagination in the human mind can create forms out of things which are here, and it can create things which are not yet. So there is a true imagination and a false imagination. True memory deceived by false memory. The activity of the mind must cease. The chitta must be purified. This is purification in yoga. It's not about moral and ethical purification, which are acharas, but necessary to create the stillness. They help to create the stillness, because all moral and ethical purification helps in some way to arrive at self-control, but it's not the end in itself. The real purification is stillness and silence. Is silence fall upon the restlessness of Prakriti, then in that calm, in that voiceless stillness, illumination comes upon the mind. Error begins to fall away, and so long as desire does not stir again, clarity establishes itself in the higher stratum of the consciousness, compelling peace and joy in the lower. So not only this stillness brings knowledge and illumination, it brings joy, it brings power, it brings peace. Right knowledge becomes the infallible source of right action, yogaha karmasu kaushalam. So, kaushalam of the karma of the Gita is not about doing a thing technically superior. That kind of technological superiority is not kushal karma, but the karma that becomes spontaneous expression of a higher truth, a higher consciousness. And Aurobindo would go on to explain at great length in the Gita when he speaks of nirvana and works in the world, that truly in a state of stillness, it is just the body which acts. All else comes from above. The light, the knowledge, the power, the strength, even the ananda and the peace and the detailed knowledge, because she is not just Maheshwari but also Mahasaraswati. Even the details of an action will come. What is to be done and how is to be done, all this will come from above and seize the mind, heart, and will and body. And that is the higher type of humanity which Aurobindo is striving to bring out through these 100 years. So we'll continue this next week. Now the reference is from early cultural writings. Aurobindo's early cultural writings, epistles from abroad. So there are letters, epistles from abroad. It's there also in SABCL.